Last week's video, I finished up my sketchbook and showed you guys a sketchbook tour. That means this week is going to be a brand new sketchbook. So hi everyone, I'm Ward and welcome to my channel Wardrawsalot, and this week I'm going to be starting a new sketchbook and reviewing it. Let's go ahead and take a look at what sketchbook I got this time. This is the Strathmore Art Journal. It's a 500 series, which means it's pretty premium paper. It's mixed media, and on top of that, it's acid-free, 100% cotton, and it's archival, which means these drawings are going to last a very long time and look as good as they did the first day that they've been drawn. The book has 64 pages, it's 8.5 by 11, and the weight of the paper is 90 pounds, which for me is a little light, but we're going to see how that works. For reference, the sketchbook is about $24, and it's a little bit in the higher price range, so I'm hoping that the price kind of equates the quality of this paper. Reading the back of the slip, it says it's a 500 series mixed media paper, hardbound art journal. It states this professional quality paper is internally sized for wet media with a durable vellum finish for drawing techniques. Excellent for watercolor, gouache, acrylic, graphite, pen and ink, colored pencil, marker, pastel, and collage. It's 90-pound vellum surface, 100% cotton fiber, acid-free, linen-free, archival, quality Smith Soon binding, and made in the USA with materials from France. The paper is super white, which is a personal preference of mine, and honestly this book looks promising, but even though it had all that stuff listed, it's time to actually swatch some stuff out. Now, of course, it's not a video by me if I don't forget to press record for something, and obviously this time it was the swatches. So, I went back in and re-swatched some stuff out just to show you guys what this paper feels like it can do. Now, the purpose of me getting this sketchbook was that I wanted to try and work with mixed media more, especially because I do have a bunch of color pencils and I miss doing regular graphite drawings and maybe even wanted to play with watercolors or gouache or something. So I thought that the best route for me to go was to get a mixed media sketchbook, which I'm not used to, but I want to at least try one or two times just to make sure I have that little that little reference point for myself, you know what I mean? Like, hey, you tried it out, and if you do or don't like it, then you can go on from there, you know what I mean? Of course, the first thing I'm going to try out is markers. Markers is my main medium, and that's what I gravitate towards all the time, so I wanted to see how markers lay down on this paper. And from what I could see, the paper, because it's a vellum surface, is going to take up just a little bit more ink in the markers, not just Copics, any marker, because it's a toothed paper. It's not gonna absorb the same way as Bristol paper would, which is like ideal for markers. But that doesn't mean that these markers did not blend very well. Like, these markers blended out superbly. Like, I gotta throw in a big word in there for that one, because it took the ink and it blended them out beautifully. And as I was doing this, I was like, man, like, this is crazy. Like, I've used some marker paper that didn't blend out as good as this paper did, and I'm guaranteeing it's because of the cotton, the 100% cotton paper. Usually that's, like, for reference, if you guys don't know, that's like the premium quality paper for practically all artists is the cotton paper. That's what makes things look like incredible. I did go ahead and swatch some other supplies like the Artex paint pen. When I swatched it, there wasn't too much of an issue, but we'll see how that plays out later on when I actually use it in a drawing. I used some Sharpies, regular pens, I did pencil, I did color pencil. Anything else that I used? I don't think so. Oh, the gel pen, there we go. I used the gel pen as well. So I used a variety of different things that I would probably gravitate towards and see how they use. And eventually down the line, I'll start using different kinds of materials in the sketchbook as well to kind of get an idea of how it works. But for now, I think that after the swatches, I was pretty happy with what we got, and I was excited to see where we can go from here. Now, as per usual, we can swatch all we want, but the real test comes when we're actually drawing something. That's when the supplies are put to their limit and can show you what they look like on something. So in this case, we're going to see how this paper can hold up against this pretty big marker slash mixed media drawing. So for the first page, I ended up going for a guy who tends to sunflowers within the kind of flower bed. Is it technically a flower bed? Yeah, right? It's sunflowers, I think. So he's tending to the sunflower bed, and he's like in his natural element, which is definitely nature, and he's in his overalls, and he's bent over, kind of looking at the viewer, almost kind of like beckoning them to come in to the sunflower bed, which I thought was something cute. Obviously, the whole sunflower thing isn't like new. I feel like a lot of people have drawn characters within sunflower fields. I feel like that's the most common kind of flower drawing, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I am, but I know I've seen it in a lot of places. I wasn't thinking about that when I was drawing it. I was just drawing it, and then I was like, damn, I kind of want to put some sunflowers behind him, so that's exactly what I did. Alright, now that I've kind of given you what I've done for the first page, I kind of want to talk about the supplies for a little bit, and what was used and how they kind of fared on this paper. Now, for reference, this isn't the first time I've used the sketchbook. The first time I used it was when I did my Artify marker review, which means I do have more than one point of reference on this paper and how markers kind of lay down on it, so I kind of can give you a more accurate, I guess, result so far on how this paper fared with the markers. When I used the Artify markers on this paper, they blended out beautifully, the ink didn't separate, it was awesome, right? I really liked using the Artify markers in the sketchbook. I didn't feel like it sucked up any extra ink more than usual. Of course, it's going to suck up some, because like I said before, it's vellum paper, it's toothed. Toothed paper and markers are very, like, iffy with each other, right? You don't want to use paper that's not too toothed, and you'd rather use marker paper or something that is super smooth like Bristol paper to get the most out of your marker ink, because it won't suck up nearly as much ink as if you were to use vellum. Now, when it came to using Copics instead of the Artify markers, I noticed that the Copic markers had a little bit more separation within the ink onto the paper. This is not necessarily the sketchbook's fault, okay? Copic markers are extremely finicky. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I've used them for a long time now, and Copic markers can be very, like, if it doesn't like the paper, it just straight up doesn't like the paper. Even its own brand of paper, like Copic paper, it would do this on, and I used to hate that. Oh my god, when I had that Copic sketchbook, bro, it was the bane of my existence, bro. You guys have no idea. I used to hate it so much because the marker ink would separate like crazy. It used to drive me insane because I'm like, dude, how are you your own brand and your paper sucks for your own product? So that's a word of advice. Don't use the Copic paper in the future. If you ever think about it, don't even bother. But Copic ink, a lot of the time, sometimes it'll just go on the paper and it'll just start like separating from itself, and I'm like, dude, why? So it's really finicky. I've used it in several sketchbooks now, like the Bailey J sketchbook. It's worked beautifully. It never separated there. It always looked perfect. I've used it on cardstock, like Nina cardstock or Astro Bright. Works perfect. I never had a problem on that when it comes to separation. So honestly, that's the marker's fault, not necessarily this sketchbook's fault. I did go ahead and give it a real beating. I am somebody who like really, blends in and uses a lot of ink with their markers, and I went back and forth constantly. I also even went in the alcohol blender, so I could give the denim a kind of worn out look, because you're not going to be wearing brand new denim within a field of flowers to go and work on the dirt and stuff like that. It's going to be beat up a little bit unless you buy a new one. But besides that point, I went in and I gave it a little bit of texture to kind of make it look a little bit more worn out. I think the colors did lay down very nicely. What I really like about this paper is that it keeps the colors super bright, and I like that because some paper, you really lose that brightness to it, and I really do think it has something to do with the fact that it's archival paper. Now, I mentioned earlier that archival paper is a kind of paper that will make your drawings last a very long time and will make it look as good as the day that it was put down. Now, the reason why this is important is for maybe a few reasons, right? Number one, in the future, after maybe 10, 20, 30, 40 years, you never know how long, you want to go back and look at your sketchbooks, right? You want to look at those drawings within their full glory, as in they look incredible just the day as you remember them or how they looked and all of that. You want to take a look at that art and you really want to just sit down and enjoy it and appreciate it. Another benefit to this paper is that, let's say down the line you get a job within the art field and they want to see your art portfolio, which is, you know, all the stuff you've drawn within different mediums and how they work. This paper will help keep that art looking as good as possible, and you don't have to go in and do any touch-ups or do any computerization touch-ups or anything of the sort. I mean, regardless, if you really want these like art pieces to last you forever, the only possible way, really, besides having archival paper, is scanning them onto a computer, saving them to a file, and making sure that you have them, you know, forever. Because realistically, technology is going to be around for a while, and these are going to keep them within their like best looks. You know what I mean? Otherwise, if you want to use these for future references for jobs and stuff like that, then I think this paper would definitely be a good investment. When it comes to me, though, I'm not going to be using it for like future art job aspects. If anything, I'm just going to be doing my silly little YouTube videos and doing my silly little drawings on here. And I just like to know that not only am I capturing it, you know, online, and that's technically my like online archive, but that the fact that I can look back at my sketchbooks like I do already now, and in the future I'm like, wow, this drawing looks the way it did because I preserved it properly. Especially marker ink, guys. Like, marker ink doesn't last forever. People sold y'all lies, alright? Marker ink does fade over time, especially if you're not using the right paper and you're not storing it in a dark place in a drawer and, like, you know, only bring it out to when you want to see it. You can't really hang it up in a room because the light fastness will just completely fade it away. If you put it in sunlight, you're screwed. Sunlight will just completely make your ink disappear. The money that you spent on marker ink, that shit will disappear. It will be gone. So honestly, the best way to preserve anything, scan it, put it on a computer, have it on a file. But besides that point, I'm somebody who does keep their sketchbooks in a dark, dry place, just so I know it's going to be good forever and I can look back at it whenever I want. That's why a lot of my drawings from forever ago still look pretty good, because I take super hard care of them. But besides that point, let's get back to how the materials worked on the sketchbook. Now, usually after I go ahead and color everything, I ink it. Normally I use a different inking pen. I think it's the Tombow Fudenosuke ink pen. I think it is. If not, I give up on the name because I never remember. I did use my Copic ink liners this time, though, to give it a softer look, and ink, when it comes to vellum paper, works beautifully because there's a toothed surface for the liner ink to kind of grab onto, so it's much easier to kind of use along this paper. And it was honestly a nice experience with it. I want to see how other liners do on this paper as well, but I honestly think it's just going to go well because it is, you know, made for this. When it came to using the Artex, right? Yeah, Artex acrylic markers, I went ahead and did that for the sunflowers. I didn't want to use marker ink for this part. Number one, because, you know, there are a lot of sunflowers in the back and I don't want to use up a lot of expensive ink for that. So I go ahead and I switch over to the Artex paint markers, but it's also a good opportunity to see how well these markers fare on this paper. And honestly, they held up pretty well. It did end up pilling up the paper, but that's like, I'm pretty sure that's really common with all paper and acrylic paint pens at this point. Every single time I've used paper on any acrylic paint pen, whether it's Artex, Posca, Molotow, Molotov, I think it's called. And they always end up just pilling the paper. I'm gonna be honest here. They always say that these are used, or like they're capable to be written or drawn on anything and everything. Like that's usually what they're advertised as, but I don't necessarily know if that's true. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. I feel like these markers usually have held up pretty well for me on paper though. This one though, it did peel up a little bit more, but I don't know. I think that that's just going to be a common thing, and that's something that I'm used to. And honestly, I don't really complain about too much because I know what I'm getting into. Realistically, any kind of paint is going to be best on a canvas, not on a paper or a rock or a shoe. It can work on that. It can be drawn on that, which is what they advertise. It can be drawn on those items, but is it going to work the best on them? Not necessarily. So here it did fare out pretty well, and I feel like they definitely did look great on this paper. Again, it really shows these beautiful bright colors as well as they possibly can. I feel like they're always nice to use at the very least for some kind of additive in the drawing, and at this time it was, you know, with the sunflowers, and I feel like it definitely gave it that nice pop in the background. I did decide not to outline the sunflowers just to make sure the guy is the focal point of the drawing, especially because, you know, whenever I do a drawing with a background, I like to leave the background as unlined as possible so the character pops out. When it came to color pencils, they gripped very well on the paper. I tried doing like this sunlight kind of shadow on the back of him, or light, not necessarily a shadow. And of course it didn't go well because I don't know how to do proper lightings. So I ended up being like, I don't like the way this looks, let me go over the yellow with the brown, and then I hated that even more. So so I was like, we're just gonna continue, I guess, messing this up until something happens. Eventually I gave up on the brown color pencil on top of the yellow because it just didn't make any sense. If it's going to be sunlight, there's not going to be brown. So I went in and I erased that color off of it, and it looked a little bit better. The gel pen worked fairly well on it because, again, it's nice grippable paper, so gel pen and color pencil worked beautifully on it. Honestly, even though I messed it up with the sunlight, I feel like he still definitely looks super cute, and I actually enjoy his pose and his expression. He looks super soft, super nice, and I honestly enjoyed using the sketchbook. I'll see how I feel down the line because it is mixed media paper, and I'm not used to it, so I'll see if I like it in the end or not, and I'll let you guys know. So yeah, thanks for watching, and remember I love you. Bye!